In over 3 decades, I've learned that truly great car dealerships are only great because of one thing: leadership. So I'm sitting down with the great men and women inspiring automotive on TimTalks, Automotive Leadership and Beyond. Welcome to yet another episode of TimTalks, and this one's a little special. This guest that we have on today, I have known for, I think coming up on 2 decades. A very long time, and it's very exciting to have him. He's truly one of my closest friends, and I watched not only him as a human being, but obviously as a leader and what he's been able to do in the automotive space. Had the chance to work with him briefly, and he is just phenomenal. In fact, if you listen to an episode a couple weeks ago, I even referenced what Adam was doing. And the whole buying SUVs when gas was $4, like that forethought. So without further ado, I want to introduce my dear friend, one of the best car guys I know, and one of the best operators that I know, my dear friend, Adam Merlin. Adam, welcome to TimTalks Leadership and Beyond. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I was flattered to think that I qualified for this show. So I appreciate it.
I think you qualify. In fact, everybody has seen the great philosopher Ron Burgundy, as he would quote, "He's kind of a big deal." I actually bought Adam at one time.
Yes, I still wear it.
T-shirt. Yes, it was a little
still wear it
for me. So I gave it to Adam, and it's now Adam's been working out, so it's probably too small for him. It does say that he's a big deal. But Adam, listen, Adam is the founder, owner, CEO, operator of Merlin Auto Group, which I would argue is one of the largest, most efficient, well thought of Ferrari, among other things, pre-owned sales and service dealers in the country, and a unique business. But Adam, kind of take us through how of your story. I think a lot of times it's good to know a little bit of the background. Obviously, even starting at Indiana, when you graduated in 4 years with 19 degrees or whatever you had, and then you went and you told your parents that you were fascinated by the car business. Let's start there.
Yeah. So we'll do. To quote Tim Cox, his favorite line of all time, the Reader's Digest version of my life story. When I was 5 years old, I told my mom if the only way I could afford a Ferrari was to not buy a house and live with her for the rest of my life, that I would forego having a home in order to have a Ferrari. So I've kind of been a car guy. Graduated Indiana University, triple major, Tim, 3 majors.
Three majors in 4 years, ladies and gentlemen. He's a smart fellow. Yeah, sorry.
So I graduated Indiana University, and I wanted to get into the car business. And I got an opportunity to go sell cars for Hank Aaron, the Hall of Fame baseball player and home run champ, in my opinion, still. But anyway, so went down there, learned a little bit about new cars very quickly, went to another opportunity that gave me more exposure. And, about 2.5 years out of college, I got my first opportunity to be the general sales manager of a Chrysler, Jeep, and Hyundai store. And the owner of that store looked me in the eye and said, I can tell you anything you want to know about the car business, but the reality is if you want to get in the car business, you need to understand used cars. And he started taking me to auctions, taught me how to buy and sell used cars, became the general manager of a Chrysler, Jeep, and Hyundai store under their flag as well. And ultimately decided it's hard to work for somebody and work for yourself at the same time. When I was a kid, I used to drag my dad to car dealerships to to go test drive whatever cool car. And he used to always tell me how he didn't want to go. And it wasn't to let me down. It was because it's such a miserable experience. You go to the car dealership, you pull up, there's all the dudes outside smoking cigarettes, blah, blah, blah. And, when I was on a very accelerated path, not because I was qualified or capable, but it was almost as though, I worked the hardest, I cared the most, I tried the hardest. And, to the owner of these dealerships, that's what they want, and it really lacks that. And so, I wanted to build a business that we could capitalize on taking care of clients and taking the pain points out of automobiles. And November 2008, gas goes to $5 a gallon. Hummers that were worth, Hummer H2s, Tim, remember those? They were worth like 40 grand overnight, became worth 10 grand. And, it seemed like a crazy time to leave, but I had just gotten married the month before, and I left and I started what is now Merlin Auto Group.
It's a fascinating story because I was there, and I not obviously in the same location, but I remember those stories, and I remember you were even smart enough to, well, number one, I even talked about this on an episode we had a couple weeks ago with Todd Caputo. And when he went out and had the forethought to buy these big SUVs when gas was, $5 a gallon. And quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't that guy. I was a pre-owned manager at the time, and I was scared to death and nervous. And guys like Todd were smarter than me, and Adam were smarter than me, and they absolutely killed it. It's just like, we talk about, coming from the pandemic through. I'm sick of talking about the pandemic, but whether it's, Heather at Fletcher Jones, who tripled her marketing during the pandemic and made market share. Adam did the exact same thing. I can remember, the humble beginnings when you came and you told me, you're like, look, if I can just wholesale 10 cars at $2,000 a copy, I'm good. And it has turned into much, much more than that. In fact, your first office was really cool, and I was fascinated. You were smart enough because you're a pilot, right? You learned to fly. You're passionate about cars and airplanes. And you got an office at the PDK airport, which a lot of here in Atlanta. And he parked he bought his first Ferrari, and he parked it outside to where these pilots, who obviously, if they're pilot, and they have their own plane, they got a little jingle, would see this Ferrari. Kind of tell us that story. That's kind of a cool story on getting your name out there, is just being so bold to have this office literally almost on the runway where these obviously affluent people would come in and then parking a Ferrari out front. That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, look, I mean, I when I quit my job and decided I was going to start something, the economy really was going downhill. Real estate was in shambles, and I figured these huge airplane hangars at these airports, like nobody, they're going to be empty. And so my bright idea is like, I'm going to fill it with cars, and I'm going to change the experience of how you buy cars, right? Back in 2008, today there's independent car dealerships that have respect. I mean, there's some that trade for multiples, they build brands. Back then, right, the only people that had independent car dealerships were like the ones that were convicted felons and could never get a franchise store, right. Or, they just didn't have the money to get a franchise store. It was a different stigma, right? So I thought with private jets and all that, and what I thought would be cheap real estate, that I could get this thing going at this, it's the second largest airport in Georgia. And I went there, and the guy literally laughed in my face when I was like, I want to rent a hangar. And he was like, it's $10,000 a spot. We put X number in there, and you have to buy a minimum amount of jet fuel. And I was like, okay, I'm out of my league here, But through a connection, I was able to lease a 400 square foot office with outstanding air conditioning, by the way. And that's what I started to do. And, through buddies like you, I had a decent reputation from going to all the auctions and buying cars and buying a lot of cars in volume. We were a high volume store when I was at the franchise store. I knew a lot of people, and I realized you could buy cars and sell them dealer to dealer. I didn't want to be a wholesaler. I didn't want to call myself a wholesaler, but I was like, I can buy all of Tim's Lexus trades and go sell them to other dealers and make a living doing it and have some flexibility until I figure out what I want to do. And 16 years later, it's ultimately become Merlin Auto Group. I miss that wholesale business. That's how I built the business. Like, that was how I generated the cash flow to build the business. I mean, at our peak, we were wholesaling 150 to 200 cars a month. I was buying every single one of them. So, and I was loving it. I mean, I'm a deal junkie. You say I was smart when cars, when SUVs went cheap. No, I had to create a market. I had to do something different. I had to take a risk, right? Like, that's all. Like, I have a tolerance for risk that perhaps, people that are well smarter than me don't. And, sometimes it pays off. A lot of times it doesn't. We could sit here and talk for 2 years about all the stupid ass ideas that I had that crashed and burned, I'll never forget, to try to get people to buy cars from us when I started this business, I insured a 3-month, 3,000 mile bumper to bumper warranty on regular used cars. I called us a boutique CarMax, right? And people would come in here, and I started getting $2, $3, $4, $5,000 after sale bills, and people were literally like rebuilding their cars. And because I was so worried about my reputation, I was writing the checks. I mean, it was a disaster. I should have gone out of business.
And that was the transition. And folks, we are going to get to leadership. There's a point to this, and that's the transition of going to the ultra high line. You started buying. You always had one or two, BMWs, Porsches, Mercedes, and then you, and maybe one or two Ferraris, and then it became, that type of clientele. Obviously, I'm not picking on a Maxima, but you told the story about somebody that bought a Nissan Maxima, it dropped the transmission, and you paid for the transmission because you didn't want the bad review online. So you went into the ultra luxury business and take us through that, because what I want listeners to know is obviously Adam doesn't have hundreds of millions of dollars behind him and VC money or private equity money or anything like that. He's built everything by his bootstraps and help from some friends. But transitioning, I think it's fascinating. Your leadership and the way, let's transition that now as we talk about leadership and beyond, that you have arguably, you started with one, then another, and we talk about John Maxwell, the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, the law of attraction. Hey, there's something going on here, i.e. Merlin Auto Group, and the law of duplicating. But it's very, especially people with Ferraris, they only allow one person to work on their car. Nobody touches their car. But you have 4 of the top Ferrari technicians in the country that are at your shop. Take us through that leadership and how you treat your people and why they leave Ferrari of Atlanta or wherever they leave to come to work for an independent shop, and how your leadership and your company, provides that platform for them to do so and enjoy what they do and thrive.
Yeah, look, I mean, part of being an entrepreneur and a little crazy is, when things don't work, you have to make changes. And you're right. The week of my 30th birthday, I bought my first Ferrari. I kept it 3 years. I spent $30,000 servicing it, and I still was able to get out of it without losing any money. Right. And I was like, wait a minute, like these cars go up in value. And like the 2-year-old Mercedes off lease car that I had out back was going down in value. I was selling more cars in volume, losing money. I couldn't compete with pay for placement on Auto Trader and all that stuff. The dealership down the road and your dealership, Tim, we're spending $10, $20, $40, $100,000 a month to make sure your certified pre-owned Lexus were on the first page. I was on the last page. And we were offering a better car. We were, no offense, we were buying frontline cars from you that were old age, that were certified, bringing them down here, spending $3,500 in recon to put new tires on them, to do the 30K properly, to put both keys. No offense. I mean, it's just, it's what happens in these big stores, high volume. And we realized our differentiator was to take the pain point out of cars. And in order to do that, you couldn't sell $25,000 cars. And with my first Ferrari, I realized that it's a different clientele. The people are looking for something different. And we wanted to try to appeal to that. Not to mention the fact I could take my 200 car inventory, shrink it down to 40 cars, and post it on Auto Trader for $1,000 a month. And because there's only one page of certain Ferrari models, I'm on the first page, right? Yeah. And so establishing that relationship and finding that niche that we could then become, I don't want to say dominant, but we could become known, right? I was never going to become known with the CarMaxes and the Sonics and the Asburys. And it was important to me to build a scalable business. Wholesaling is a great business, but it's a job. If I'm at the beach, unless I have 40 buyers and, a used car dealership, just buying and selling cars, going to the auction, trying to buy cars, it's a job. I mean, it can be a great living, but it's still just, kind of a job. So I wanted to build something that was scalable. I then realized that it was very important as the leader to, my frustration was if I had a Ferrari here, I was the only person that could sell it, right? I had regular car salesmen here. If I had a Bentley here, I was the only person that could deal with the clients. And it was very important for me to go out and try and find people that had experience selling luxury items and doing it independently, because I didn't have the bandwidth to do it all, right? And I needed people to help. And, through luck and connections, I hired, who's arguably probably the best salesman I've ever had working with me ever, who was into luxury goods. He lived in one of the luxury hotels here that had residences. And we started appealing to clients like Chanel appears to their clients in their boutiques. Like, we were modeling after the Four Seasons type experience, and realized that it was, not only because of the supply and demand of the cars we started carrying, but because, if you're buying a $150,000 car, you don't really care if it's 140 or 160. You want the best car, the best experience, and you don't want to get screwed. And we were trying to do that with $20,000 cars, and we were only losing a little money per car, and doing 100 cars turned into losing a lot of money. Mm-hmm. We figured if there was a way to actually make margin and still deliver the product, it was a much better idea. So for us, it was very, very, for me, back then, it was me, right? I couldn't get people to come work here. Like, I would joke with Tim, you need to come work here and help me, right? And he's the pre-owned manager of a fancy Lexus store, big office. I remember when he got his couch, and it was all big deal, right? And we were like an independent, who are these guys? And it dawned on me that taking the, same thing I was doing to attract clients was what I needed to start doing to attract people. And that was to improve their quality of life, right? Whether it was a 5-day work week, no weekends, Johnny plays soccer on Saturdays. You never want to work on Saturday again, Tim? Great. Come work here. You want me to protect your downside? Great. I can't pay you $250,000, but, I can pay you $5,000 a month guaranteed and help me build this thing, right? And found ways to find, people that were morally and ethically aligned, that understood the value proposition and the vision at the time, which has changed 14 times, and to come and help me do that, and realize that changing their quality of life was more important than money. And unfortunately, just like I talked about your frontline CPO Lexus, in a dealership the magnitude and size of some of these stores, details get missed, right? It has nothing to do with you were not an effective CPO manager. It has to do with things get missed. There's it's bandwidth, right? And as leaders, we only have limited bandwidth. If I delivered every single car, if I was the one washing it, waxing it, whatever it is, I'd like to think that I would never miss a detail, but I'm a terrible detail guy. So I would miss the little details, So, it's important to understand that while I want to scale a business, I was not willing to scale beyond our ability to offer an uncompromised value proposition to our client, right? And I had to find people that could help me do that. And the way to do that was to improve their quality of life. And you would be shocked how in this business, right, everybody's motivated by money. It's all about money. What was your net check? What was your bonus check? What's your guarantee? How many demos do you get, right? And the reality is it's a very challenging business. The clients, by and large, don't trust us, don't like us. They come in with their guard up. We work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, right? That is not a quality of life. Like, who cares if you make $500,000 doing that? All you do is sit at home online or at your computer when you have downtime, buying stuff to make you feel better. I remember when I was doing that, selling 250 cars a month, every day I'd go home, there'd be 3 packages at my house. I had all this money and no time, right? Yeah. And so I realized that, quality of life was really what was important. And then, Tim, we started doing all these exotics. I was outsourcing all of my service. I was standing behind the cars, right? Our client calls from California. I want to buy that Ferrari 360. It was just serviced at the Ferrari dealer. Here's the invoice. It was $15,000, blah, blah, blah. Gets to him, has a problem, right? Takes it to the Ferrari store out there. I get a call. Yeah, it needs $21,000 worth of work. And I'm like, okay, great, do it, right? And I'm like, good Lord. So one year looking at our financials, and we had spent a lot of money, 7 figures plus multiple 7 figures on outside services, fixing these cars up, and then after sale stuff. And I was like, I got to get a technician, and it's, it isn't like you can go to Jiffy Lube and start recruiting Ferrari technicians. And the Ferraris we specialize in were the older things. I wasn't buying the newer stuff. I didn't have the money to go out and buy 20 $400,000 Ferraris. So I was buying $100,000 and less Ferraris, right? And I knew if they weren't going to go down in value, my money was somewhat protected. And, ultimately they would go up in value like my first Ferrari did. And I was told by multiple people, mentors, I mean, there's no way you're going to get a Ferrari technician. They'll never come to a place like yours, blah, blah, blah. Right up until I started talking to one of the best Ferrari technicians at a local Ferrari dealership. And I was telling him kind of what I was doing. And he was a very cool guy with a great personality. And he was telling me some of his frustrations at the Ferrari dealership. He's like, the cars are great, but it's about turning hours. It's about getting work out of the shop. It's about profitability, and what I heard the most, Tim, was not about compensation. What I heard the most was like, I feel like, I feel like I'm like a horse just getting whipped, right? Like I'm a number, I make X, I have to produce Y, right? When I give feedback, no one listens to me. Right. And so we hired him, and that was the beginning of building, what is now the largest independent Ferrari shop. Very recently, about a year ago, we hired arguably the best Porsche technician in the country. So we've serviced more Carrera GTs and GT3s, RSs and GT2s of late. Porsche is an incredible brand that,
Wasn't he on the Porsche racing team at one time?
So he was with Porsche for 20 years. He opened the Classic and Restoration Center here at the Experience Center in Atlanta. He was recruited out of Ohio by Porsche North America. He was working at a Porsche franchise store. He consults with the race team in Germany back when he worked with them. And look, another example, he got tired of the quality of life. He got tired of the bureaucracy and the big corporate environment. He left to go be a professor at the local vocational school up here, the technical college. Applied to a LinkedIn job posting. I'm looking at his resume, and I said to my GM, I was like, he has to be a serial killer. Like, how does this guy ever leave Porsche? Like, this can't be real. He comes in, and he's like, look, I have a son. My wife works. If he's sick, I need to be able to go get my son. If he's out of school, I might need to bring my son to work, And I'm like, dude, I got 3 kids. Like, I love it when my kids come to work, like, it's just not that serious. We're not curing cancer, Like it just doesn't have to be that serious. And so when I first started selling Hyundais in Riverdale, Georgia, the salesman that had been there the longest time, when I came in as a manager and everybody thought I was related to the owner, and that's how a young guy could do it. And he said, Adam, the only advice I will give you is talk to your people and find out what motivates them. Right. A lot of them, it's going to be money. Some of them, it's going to be cocaine. Some of them, it's going to be prostitutes. Some of them, it's going to be, leopard skin shoes, whatever it is. Right. Find out what makes them tick and then use it to motivate them. Right. Like, I wasn't interested in the cocaine and hooker ones, but, I can't tell you how many times, buying somebody a pair of shoes was better than giving them $1,000 bonus. And, I took that lesson when I was trying to attract the top talent to a little warehouse off of an industrial road that nobody knew about. And it was to figure out, what motivated them. And, what my people, if you come through here, the people on our team, they will say that the most resounding thing I hear is they say, there's not a day that I don't leave here that somebody doesn't thank me for something. And he's like, I never used to get thanked. Yeah. You know how much that cost us?
Nothing.
Zero, but look, it's not like a secret sauce. It's not it's not any revelation or any brilliance. It's just, I've always, I learned you treat people how you want to be treated. That's how we treat our clients. And more importantly, that's how we treat our employees, because then our employees will do the same for our clients. That's the Richard Branson.
We talked about that before. We've had that conversation before, and it was his quote, and you can say it again for us, that really what you modeled your business by. Look, for a guy that went from running a couple dealerships to, I'm going to do this on my own in a 400 square foot office, to having, again, arguably the best Ferrari technicians in the country, and one of the, if not the best, Porsche technicians in the country. And if you guys, by the way, you probably want, most of you listening are car guy and gals, go to merlinautogroup.com and check out the facility. One of the most beautiful independent, in fact, I wouldn't even say independent, one of the most beautiful facilities that I've had the privilege to walk through. Let's park there. I really think that most people, and we've said this over and over again, but you've again said it so well. Finding out what the it is or the why in individuals. Somebody that was on a couple episodes ago said, you've got your you've got the people like Dennis Rodman that have all this talent, but they have to be coached and mentored a separate way than you coach a Jordan, right? Or you coach a Pippen, right? They're all different, but there's a common denominator. People want to be appreciated. People want to be, as I say, loved on. I really believe, Adam, like you've been in a bunch of stores just like me, because you were all over Atlanta, even all different states buying cars, and you see a lot of great operations, but unfortunately you see a lot of not so great operations. And there's one common denominator, which is why we started this, and we got some emails and I got some text. Hey, can't crank TimTalks back up, but we changed the genre because leadership is the key. It's truly the key. Look, love our, Car Now. We built it. Our software is great. It doesn't matter. But Car Now is not going to change your culture, right? It's the leadership in the dealership. It's leadership and beyond. But I really believe for somebody to have that epiphany or that mindset, they have to get over the ego of themselves, right? The ego.
And you have to truly care, right? Like you truly have to care. Like you cannot fake that. And unfortunately, like the reason the experience is so terrible at most of these dealerships is because the only thing that people care about are themselves, and they're financially compensated to do what's not in the best interest of their client. I mean, it's a fundamentally incorrect way to compensate people to deliver the best product to their client. It's the best way to do it for profitability. My profitability suffers all the time because some of my people's base compensation isn't tied to their production. So they get paid a lot of money, whether they're doing anything or not. But I say they get paid more by treating the client right, because they treat the client right, the client's going to come back. Our average client has 10 cars. We deal with all of them. We buy the cars for their nannies. We help them do whatever. They never ask us about price because they don't have to worry.
And I think one of the most interesting things, most of his clients never come in. Adam has built such a brand with Merlin Auto Group that they just trust him because they know if there's an issue that he's going to fix it or he's going to take it back or give them options. It's that type of service. And the Richard Branson comment that I want to kind of land the plane as we close this out, we're definitely going to have to schedule an episode 2. Is if you take care, and correct me if I don't say it correctly, but the first thing in business, if you take care of your people, then they'll take care of your people first, then they take care of your clients. They take care of your guests. And you've really taken that to, because I've seen it. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen it. I've been there. Adam's been a dear friend. In fact, just this morning, as we were talking, hey man, because things get busy in the car business, make sure there's no fires that he's not putting out and make sure that we're good to do this. And we were talking about a lot of the entrepreneurial, things that we have to, that a lot of people don't see, right? So Adam has been such a dear friend for so many years, even though he busts me up even more than my wife, but that's why I love him even more. But just an incredible job, dude. Just an incredible job. And another thing I'm gonna point out, and this isn't an Adam love fest, maybe it is, but the things that you don't talk about that I just think you're blessed by God because He sees it, is all the entrepreneurial. All the philanthropy that you do. The time that you bought the van for the kid, and all that type of stuff that nobody knows about. It's not in any papers. Guys, there's a common denominator there. I really believe that you've been blessed in some ways, even though the stress of being an entrepreneur, even though we look at P&L sheets and all that other stuff, is gone because, quite frankly, dadgummit, you're a great human being.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And, like I said, it's lucky for me that it's easy to do the right thing because I want people to do the right thing to me. And, you attract other people that are like-minded. And, take the risks, and it's miserable some days. There ain't no doubt.
Yep.
but
Yep.
I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you saying all the nice things. Every now and again, it's good to hear from somebody that they think you're doing a good job. So
yeah, I appreciate your brother. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking hopefully, and a lot of you guys, I get the texts, I get the emails, I'm your commute. We're your commute as you try to get pumped up or wind down from a day. Thank you for giving us a shout as we continue to gain momentum. Truly grateful as we just, I'm on the back nine, but I want to make a difference in this business that's been so good to me. And that difference is leadership. Let's think differently. Let's continue to treat our people in such a way that there's no question on how they take care of our guests. As we always say, no one is smarter than everyone. Y'all, we're just going to keep getting better together. This is Tim. We'll see you next time.